Has the king returned? Well, it was surely unpruned and anti-magic zone. I'm sure the spec should feel better. Ray's dead. I mean, you can use some proper Lichborn. You know what? Let's just get on with this shit. Roon Tap! Before we delve into the nitty-gritty bits, you should definitely follow us on twitch.tv/MarcelianOnline. We stream 5 days per week and playtest a lot of classes and specs and delve into theory crafting with you, lovely viewer. You might also catch us doing dungeons and raids with you, lovely viewer. It finally feels like I'm playing a Death Knight again. Fuck yeah! Anti-magic zone is back, ladies and gentlemen. You may now be seated. In this iteration, it puts a zone down that offers people inside 20 magic % reduction. Oh, it's 20% magic damage reduction. Jesus Christ, what the fuck? I can read. I promise I graduated high school. Jesus Christ. This kind of utility can literally put Death Knights on the map and give Bloods an extra reason to be invited to the group. Ossuary just made it into the baseline kit, and thank God for this. The talent row it was on felt incredibly dead. The overall performance of the passive outweighed all of the other options on the low, and in the long run, Blood survives by the amount of efficient death strikes it can dish out. Roon Tap is also baseline once again. It's also off the GCD. Took them long enough. This is a controversial button to press since it eats a rune you would normally spend on Hard Strike. Fundamentally, pressing it offers a misleading amount of durability. It robs you of 5 to 15 runic power due to the rune not being spent on a better generator. Having 20% reduced damage essentially gimps your next death strike that hits within 9 seconds, or death strikes plural, because death strike scales off of damage taken. Also gimps your mastery at the same time, since the absorption will be smaller if your death strike is smaller. Hence, from a design perspective, you are trading one mitigation for another, consuming a rune and not dealing any damage and generating extra runic power in the process. Maybe if Roon Tap was free, then it wouldn't feel this way. No other tank seems to have to do this. And before you say Warrior chooses to use Rage on Ignore, Pain or Shield Block, it's not the same. Shield Block is on a cooldown with charges and a gazillion times more powerful than Death Strike, while Death Strike's efficiency comes from consistency and the number of uses. If you use Ignore Pain during your Shield Block recharge time, you don't delay the recharge and you don't eat the charges. If you think differently, hit the comment section. I'm curious to know what you actually think or what your opinion is. It's open for discussion. Don't talk about my mama, please. Don't talk about my mama. Raise that comes as a 2-in-1 combo with Sacrificial Pact to act as an AoE DPS and self-heal cooldown. Plural. The damage is actually pretty nice for Blood, and the heal can work well in situations where you need to kite and are low and cannot death strike. It can work well in every other situation as well. Pretty neat. Would be even cooler if Sacrificial Pact can be used on other undeads you control, but I can see how instantly being able to kill an undead mob in a dungeon skew the power a bit. Still, too many cooldowns though. From the depths of the PvP talent world, Lichborn came off the GCD to assist you with Leech. I am grateful it's off the GCD, but why aren't Icebound and AMS also off the GCD? Them being actual cooldowns. The main issue with Lichborn is that Leech doesn't fully work on Death Strike. For most other classes, Leech also procs from self-heal, and on the spec where self-heal is actually a fucking mitigation, you would think Leech would work on it. With the Hardened Bones Endurance Conduit, it will give you 5% damage reduction up to 15% at rank 15, which turns it into a legit defensive cooldown, but until then, Other than that, you can break a few CC types, so it's nice, and you can heal yourself with Death Coil. Don't. This is on a similar boat with Roon Tap. It eats precious runic power that needs to go exclusively to death strikes. deals significantly less damage and heals for a lot less if popped on you with Lichborn active. It is range, which gives it very specific usages, can be good when trying to get aggro on a ranged target which you cannot taunt or grip, I suppose. Lastly, worth mentioning are a few new rune forging options. Rune of Sanguination seems to have been made for blood. It can be a nice damage boost to Death Strike in Execute, and depending on the content, the heal is also nice. I found it good when fighting small trickles of incoming damage that cannot fuel a big Death Strike properly. It's also really good on Execute phases, and seeing as you can weapon swap, you could just have it on a secondary weapon when raiding and swap it for big damn Death Strikes. Other than that, I can see Rune of Hysteria being the go-to for super hard content, especially dungeons. Extra runic power and runic power generation is good enough that it deserves its own weak aura. Rune of Spell Warding seems like a PvP option, since the magic damage intake in PvE is usually not that consistent to have this instead of a pure DPS and HPS gain. The other options are mostly Frost and Unholy orientated, for which we have videos out already, and some updates soon depending on when you actually watch this one. I would like to formally invite you to the controversy section of the video. Shackle the Unworthy is no controversy whatsoever. It's dog shit. Well, it does offer a 5% damage reduction with a supposedly 30% uptime, so defensively it's not that bad. It's boring as shit though. It's on a 1-minute cooldown and lasts for 14 seconds. When you consume runes on attacks, you reduce its cooldown by 4 seconds per rune, hence the high uptime. The Ardenwold Night Fae ability seems to be mathematically the best so far for all of the Death Knight specs. It replaces Death and Decay and becomes Death's Due. While inside, enemies deal 1% reduced damage to you and you gain 1% strength, scaling up to 15%. In terms of numbers, this is by far the best one right now, depending on how the tuning will go. Honestly, I'd rather see the other ones buffed, but hey, that's just me. The Venthyr come with Swarming Mist. This lasts for 8 seconds and gives you 10% dodge, maybe one of the strongest types of defensives. It will also generate runic power, 3 per target per damage tick, up to a maximum of 15 runic power per 1 damage tick event in AoE. This is a lot of runic power, which will save you in a pinch and gives your runes some time to recharge, since you will probably fill in a few globals with back-to-back death strikes, in AoE at least. Abomination Limb! Fuck the meta, fuck power gains, fuck everything. I am taking an AoE hand claw thing that damages everything and pulls them close for hugs so I don't cry in a corner when the darkness falls. Whew, that was intense. But really, this is literally the most fun Covenant ability I have ever played with. My DK is 1,000,000% going Necrolords in Shadowlands. You can do 2-3 keys higher than me, I don't care, I'll hang back here pulling all the shit all the time. To my face! Thank you very much, see you next time. A couple of talents changed around since some became baseline. Tombstone took the first row and in its place Blood Tap made a return. Blood Tap is a 1-minute cooldown now that gets reduced every time a bone shield is consumed by 2 seconds per stack. It also has baseline 2 charges. There are usually moments when you are low on runic power and runes as well and need that extra hard strike to fuel a death strike, or maybe to put a death and decay down. Either way, it's a nice addition. Will it be the best? Hard to say. Relish in Blood replaces Ossuary on the same row, and it is supposed to make your Crimson Scourge procs buff your next Death Strike to heal you for a flat amount per each Bone Shield stack and immediately generate 10 Runic Power. Runic Power gains are usually pretty strong, even if the heal is mediocre. Mark of Blood, what's Mark of Blood, moved down to replace Roon Tap, and in its place you have Death Pact. Again, finally. Really, how did we not have this up until now. It's a big ass heal for 50% of your HP that absorbs the next 30% of your HP in healing. The absorb lasts for 15 seconds. This can be played by you and your healer in multiple ways. If anything, you cannot not cast death strikes for 15 seconds, so you would naturally fill the absorb back up, after which your healer can just take over and they don't lose out on mana. Or they can assist you and turn Death Strike into an effective 20% of your HP heal, considering you will take unhealable damage while that 30% absorb will last. Complicated? Nah, Blood is easy. Problem is that numbers-wise, this is still inferior to Voracious, which itself is inferior to Bloodworms. Usually we look at spec-specific legendaries, but for this one we will make an exception. Vitality Sacrifice is a general legendary that any class can use. It puts an absorb shield on you that the first time you deal damage to an elite, it reflects the absorbed damage back. It has an internal cooldown of 1 minute and only works on one target at a time, which is still okay, meaning you could have it up for every other pack. In its current iteration, the absorb is fairly hefty and can build up to a decent amount of sustain over long fights. Brindeor's Might makes Death Strike refund 15% runic power if it heals you for more than 10% of your maximum health. 10% is not a lot, so the uptime could be really good. This makes non-ossuary Death Strikes even cheaper than normal ossuary Death Strikes, and with ossuary up, you will pay essentially 34 runic power per Death Strike. Since ossuary was so strong that it had to become baseline, I feel this can maybe be one of the better legendaries. For those melee heavy encounters, Crimson Rune Weapon can work really well to reduce the cooldown of Dancing Rune Weapon. The most use you could get out of this is clearly from AoE, hence Mythic Plus. Dancing Rune Weapon is a pretty strong cooldown when used right, so the legendary can serve you well. Gorfian's Domination will work similarly for Vampiric Blood, where Hard Strike reduces the cooldown of Vampiric Blood by 2 seconds. This could be a good legendary for progression content. More Vamp Bloods are pretty cool, and if you take the Red Thirst, the cooldown can be significantly lower. I still prefer the next one though, because the next one is Vampiric Aura. Oh yeah, it's back, baby. Popping Vampiric Blood puts it on your allies for 50% of its effect. It's not Leech like what made Blood be a beast in Legion, but it can and probably will be a raid cooldown that can align with your healer's cooldown. It does work on your party members only, it seems, so can also work well in dungeons when playing with, say, a Discipline Priest. Any content, when timed with a healing cooldown aimed at getting your party back up, this buffs that cooldown with around 17% more healing and absorbs. Not to mention it gives everyone else 15% max HP. Soulbinds and conduits could potentially be a bigger influence on what covenant you will pick. Soulbinds are the NPCs that provide you with a secondary talent tree and a few empty talent slots, which will be the actual conduits. As a tank, you might not want full offensive routes and options. You might want Mechanicos from the Kyrians with his Sparkling Drift Globe core. When you dip below 35% of your HP, you stun enemies around you for 3 seconds. With an internal 1 minute cooldown, this is made for Blood DKs when doing tough content. If you run with Will of the Necropolis, it will be inevitable that you will dip in the 30 percentiles, and those 3 seconds are just enough for you to Death Strike back to full. Although stuns are easily come by, and if your group is running monks and demon hunters, Pelagos is way better. Between Let Go of the Past for versatility buffs and all of the File of Serenity buffs, cause, you know, health pots, Combat Meditation boosts mastery as well, which is really good defensively. Similarly, Emony from the Necrolords, cause you are going with Necrolords cause you have class and taste and, you know, comes with Sulfuric Emission that acts the same but with a fear instead. It is a bit weaker but still means you will be shaving off melee attacks for a few seconds. The Nightface Soulbind Dreamweaver is an interesting choice. For one thing, Pod Tender is god-awful for DK, almost so that it can guarantee you will still die because of how the damage intake is. But Social Butterfly is so strong that it could be worth getting Dreamweaver and simply not picking Pod Tender. The trait stacks, and if other people have it, the verse ping pong will net you and everyone else a lot of damage, healing, and DR amp. In a similar fashion, you have General Draven from the Venthyr with Hold Your Ground. Standing still for 4 seconds increases your stamina by 10% and the healing you do by 4%. Both good for Blood DK, and it persists for 4 seconds after moving, which can happen if you want to start kiting. And those 4 seconds are enough for you to get out of range. Pretty good. Again, thinking of Mythic Plus here. All of this is well and good, but these specific traits are on paths that will unlock specific conduit types, and maybe you want certain ones that do not match what you unlock. As far as tanks are concerned, the 4 blood specific are to potency and to endurance, which is a godsend that the devs didn't force you to go full potency conduits. Potency is usually damage and healing output, while endurance focuses on defensives. Blood Bond, for instance, is an endurance conduit that makes your Roon Tap heal your party for 5% of your maximum health. At rank 1 anyway, because this scales to rank 15 to offer 15% of your HP as an AoE heal. 5% for you is not enough, I'd say, to warrant Rune Tap to be used often, but for your party it could net into overall decent healing over the course of a dungeon. Meat Shield buffs Dancing Rune Weapon to last longer and increase your HP when you parry, stacking twice and lasting for 15 seconds. Say you play the Rune Weapon cooldown reduction legendary with this baby. There is some synergy there for sure. The 2 potency conduits are Withering Plague, where Heart Strike deals more damage to targets with Blood Plague on them, so basically all targets, and Debilitating Malady that makes Blood Boil increase the damage enemies take from Blood Plague for 6 seconds. Seeing as you will end up spamming Blood Boil, the uptime on the damage increase should be 100% no doubt. Blood DK feels like it's in a better spot right now, although iffy, Roon Tap being off the GCD can offer situational usage where it won't feel like a null gain when it comes to tankiness. The talents being moved a bit is a step in the right direction, although I still see it hard to not pick Will of the Necropolis, hence not sure if the other talents will ever see the light of day. The fundamental issues with Blood Death Knights remain, and it's heavily tied to the GCD. The design of the spec doesn't fit the game as much as other tanks, and Blood DKs are either meh or incredibly overpowered, since the only way to fix the issues with Blood Death Knights is to buff their numbers to become literally walking elites or bosses or gods. Because mechanically, Blood is inferior. The active mitigation of Blood DKs is Death Strike. Death Strike can only be used after you took the damage. How can you mitigate damage after you took it? Presuming you survive the attack that needs to be healed. No other tank has to do this. Every other tank has active mitigation that stops that damage from going through with full force. And we are not talking here about Icebound Fortitude or Shield Wall, which are situational. As such, if the Blood DK survives the attack, it can heal most of its damage back. The other issue is with GCD. During the span of one global cooldown, you could die once or twice where other tanks press Iron Fur or Shield Block. Ian mentioned that if the GCD window is filled with so many lethal events, the problem is with the encounter design and not the class. My point is this: human reflexes are faster than a second, are way faster than a GCD. If you put someone on their toes to play a tank in a high octane environment, chances are that person will find that they want to do X and Y and Z, but only have time to do X. This has been a more in-depth look at what I think Blood is like and what the issues could be. I could be wrong, and I am sure you will correct me in the comments, and if you want the most accurate info, really go to the Accurate Discord. The big brains there are more than happy to help out and update everyone with the newest changes to Death Knights. And of course, we would like to thank our patrons for supporting our content and everything that we do. We recently finished a giveaway for 50 beta invites, and hopefully more of this can happen in the future. And if you like our content that's made possible by all of the support we're getting, you can check the links down below to our Patreon and our merch website that can give you shirts like this. Plus, we have more shirts with the theme of our music video, which you can check on our channel. It's in the channel trailer. Thank you very much for watching the video. Stay awesome, and we'll see you next time.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.